Today, we're committing suicide with body bag. Suicide doors, that is. We'll show you how to give your truck some cool reverse opening doors. And we'll also show you how to French tail lights. And we'll take a trip to Valvoline's oil research labs to watch them test oil in ways you won't believe. That's all today here on Trucks.
Hey, welcome to Trucks. Do you remember this one? Well, in case you don't, this is Project Body Bag, our slammed 97 Nissan hardbody that'll lay out the frame while it's tucking 20-inch wheels.
And mini trucks are everywhere, and some of the workmanship, it's pretty amazing. So we wanted to do something that had never been done on trucks before. Build a wild mini truck that'll drag all day long. So we took a bone stock hardbody, chopped the 6-lug axle off the back, and added a Toyota 5-lug 2-wheel drive axle for better wheel and tire selection. Then we fabricated a triangulated 4-link with huge C-notches for maximum axle travel, so we could lay frame no matter what wheels we had.
Out front, we used CanDo Customs upper and lower control arms with Toyota drop spindles and ball joints to match the bolt pattern out back. But to let us roll on 20s, we needed to create some room on the inner aprons and firewall, and used a smaller Geo Metro brake booster, as well as utilizing Pathfinder front fenders for more room in the wheel opening. Also, we could throw an air system on this truck and drop it into the weeds.
Once the fabrication was done and we wired up the switches, we dragged it up and down the highway for the better part of a day and hammered on it pretty hard. But whatever we threw at it, it could definitely take it. So with the suspension done and having proven itself to be roadworthy, it's only right that we deck this truck out with some custom body work and finish what we started.
So we're gonna give Body Bag all kinds of custom body mods, like shaving the door handles. We'll give it roll pans. We'll fill in the light pockets. But one thing that we're gonna show you guys how to do is something that's been around hot rodding since hot rodding began, and even before, suicide doors.
Now there are several theories on how suicide doors got their name. Some say it's because if the door were to open while the car or truck is moving, your natural reaction is to grab the door and try to close it. And if you're not belted in, it could literally pull you right out of the car when it caught the wind. And another theory, if a driver's getting out of his car on a tight city street, well, the potential's there to get sideswiped. You can imagine the consequences.
But it didn't stop the car manufacturers from making them. Vehicles like Lincolns and Mercurys, as a matter of fact, they're still making reverse opening doors. Mazda, Rolls-Royce, F-150s, Silverados, they all have suicide doors. And if they were unsafe, the great custom car builders like George Barris, Ed Roth, and Gene Winfield, well, they still incorporated them into their classic custom designs.
Another custom builder, Eric Saliba of the Little Shop of Horrors, gave us a hand the first time around with some of the fab work on Body Bag. And Eric and the crew have come through again big time with a custom bed floor, smooth tailgate, and obviously the reversed hinges on the passenger door.
Eric, this looks great. Nice work, man.
Thank you.
But there's more to it than just the skin. So we loaded Eric up with a camera last time he was here. He set it off in the corner and captured what it takes to get to this point. Check it out. The first thing Eric and the boys did was to relocate the fuel tank, compressors, and air tank between the frame rails. Then they created a framework of rectangular tubing in the bed and fabricated a huge tub to go over the axle. Side and floor panels were cut from 18-gauge steel, and a fuel door was liberated from a Chevy truck.
They pulled the bed off again to mark the braces, and everything was drilled. And then welded in place using over 150 rosette welds. Finally, the welds were ground flush, and any gaps got smoothed with sealer.
That's about all it takes.
Yeah, that in about 80 hours worth of work.
No kidding.
And that's all custom fab work, but you guys used a kit on the passenger side door.
That's right. This comes from suicidedoors.com. These are the receiver tubes, the strikers, the latches, the recessors, and these heavy-duty hinges.
And using a kit like this stops you from having to reverse the factory hinges. It really makes it simpler, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Well, let's do it. Now, before you get punchy and start taking things apart, remember your doors need to stay on for alignment. But these interior trim panels, they gotta go away.
The inner structure behind the door needs to be trimmed for clearance around the new hinges. The hinge pockets need to be perfectly parallel. So using a length of 5/16 all thread, the pockets are bolted together with jam nuts. The location is marked from the outside and trimmed until the pockets slide in from behind the door jamb. Everything gets tacked just to hold it in place. Once your pockets are located, the all thread can come out, and the hinges get bolted onto the receivers.
Well, now that Eric's got the hinges located, the next step is to take the recessors and attach them to the door. And the easiest way to locate them properly is to bolt them to the hinges. You close the door on the hinges and just trace them out from the backside. Cool. Now that we got these in place, we pull the factory pins up front and then tack these back in place.
Here's where you're gonna need a buddy. Eric holds the door while Kevin knocks the hinge pins out. Now the hinges are still mounted on the door and frame, which locates the door perfectly while the recessors get tacked into their new home.
All right, give it a try.
Cool. We're halfway home.
When we come back, we're going to Valvoline's engine facility to watch them test their newest oils by punishing them around the clock, day and night. And later, we'll show you how to make your suicide doors pop, literally. Stay tuned.
Hey, welcome back to Trucks. We're unzipping the body bag, throwing some custom sheet metal mods at it, like that suicide door kit. And by the time we're through, this will truly be a custom truck through and through.
Now, bodywork aside, this was a good running truck. And if you follow this project, you'll realize that we hadn't done anything to the engine. This thing runs like a top, and that's with 172,000 miles on it. The long life of an engine has a lot to do with the quality of the motor oil used in it. So if you've ever wondered how engine oil is developed and tested, well, you might find this interesting. The trend is to blend specialty oils, even for high mileage applications like our Nissan. To check out how this is done, we headed to Kentucky, home of the Valvoline facilities.
They developed the first motor oil, the first multi-viscosity oil, and the first racing oil, all designed to solve different problems.
Today, with 6 out of 10 cars having 75,000 miles or more, the challenge is designing one for high mileage engines. To make that happen, oil engineers have a lot of ingredients to consider.
He has to select what types of base oils, what types of detergents, dispersants, antioxidants, anti-wear agents, friction modifiers, a whole array of different components that have different functions.
As prototypes are blended, a team of chemical engineers subject them to a battery of punishing tests. Boundary friction, cold cranking levels, viscosity flow, high and low shear, pumping rates, pour points, spectrographic analysis, and heat loss.
This is an ASM D58 evaporation loss test, and we use it for max life to determine the evaporation loss in engine lubricants.
And just when you think this lab testing can't get tougher, it does. Valvoline is the only oil company with its own engine test facility that can qualify passenger car oils.
Whether it's oil for air and liquid-cooled motorcycles or marine testing for Coast Guard patrol boats, nothing gets approved without passing some extreme and unique engine tests.
Adam Swarsky dyno tests competitor oils on an Acura RSXS Turbo. At just 3,500 RPM and only 4 pounds of boost, the 1,300 degree EGT, the oil coked, wiping out the turbine bearing.
Tim Caudill studies the effect of high mileage oil on fuel economy using chassis dynos and a pair of ex-Michigan police cars 24/7. These 4.6 liter Crown Vic Interceptors burn through thousands of gallons of gas, testing max life formulations looking for improved fuel economy.
Currently, they're probably up in the 160s, 170,000 mile range.
Designing the world's first high mileage oil took 2 years.
We took older cars, older engines. We inspected older engines to see what they needed. They needed seal swell. They needed improvements in oil consumption. They needed deposit removal. We formulated that to meet those needs.
While the American Petroleum Institute created the test to beat the oil, these guys formulate oils to beat the test.
The engine facility runs around the clock, administering punishing ASTM tests. Everything from low temperature cam wear, hot and cold sludge tests, valve seal testing, and viscosity tests.
And after all that testing, this is where we break down the engines and analyze the results.
Parts do fail, but most survive for detailed analysis.
This is what the piston looks like before we put it in the engine. This is what one looks like after 100 hours of running.
The brutal and expensive G3 piston test costs $45,000 to run each time. It measures a different oil for varnish blow-by. It takes a skilled eye to measure 20 different oils day in and day out.
Now, this is what we're looking for. When the oil's right, you have very little deposits.
A Sequence 8 test uses this special one-cylinder engine to test different oils for rod bearing wear.
This is the rod out of that engine. We're going to measure it for bearing weight loss.
After 40 hours at 3,150 RPM, Dave Caproni uses a digital scale to determine exactly how many milligrams of bearing wear occurs with each oil tested. These tests may be constant, but with engine technology changing constantly, formulating and testing newer, better specialty oils is a never-ending process.
It's exactly like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. Once you're finished, you go back to the other end and start over again.
Up next, it's remote control door poppers for body bag. And we're gonna shave the door handles.
Hey, welcome back to Trucks. Project Body Bag is on the table, getting autopsied, and suicide doors are the word of the day. Eric Salib is sticking around to help us out, and so far today we've gotten the suicide door hinges done on the back, a little bit of reinforcement in place, and everything roughed in. Now it's time to put the latches in. Now, where the center pull used to be on these doors makes a nice location for these bear claw style latches that came with the kit. So these will mount here. The striker mounts on the hinge pillar. It's locked into place when the door closes, and it's all released with a cable pull.
Now over here on the passenger side with the latch installed and the cover plate welded in, here's what you'll end up with. And since we're shaving the outside door handle, we're going to use a technique that car builders have been using for decades. So we had CustomClassics.com send us this actuator kit that includes key fobs, this control unit, and these door poppers that'll kick the door open when the latch is released using these 50-pound solenoids.
We've mounted our spring-loaded poppers on the front of the door frame, where we had a strong piece of flat metal on the door to push against. The actuator gets mounted at a 45-degree angle to the latch in the bottom corner of the door. Now, don't use pop rivets or sheet metal screws to mount it. They can back out and loosen over time. Our cable length is measured with a piece of wire with the latch and actuator in the door. Now, pulling the latch and actuator out of the door makes this a lot easier, and then you can install the supplied cable and crimps. Using the wire as a guide, factor in about a ½ inch of slack, and then crimp the cables. Then the whole assembly goes back into the door. The actuator is grounded to the chassis by bolting it in, and only needs a single wire with a 12-volt source to activate it.
Sweet. With the door trimmed and the cover plate tacked in, Kevin attaches a cable to the latch for a temporary release and installs it into the door. Eric lays down a final tack on the striker, and we're ready to test the alignment.
That it?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, you're on your own now.
Man, thanks for your help.
All right.
If you're doing custom bodywork, you need to be pretty confident in your welding and fabrication skills. Well, Grant Customs makes this easier by providing custom sheet metal for you. Bob Grant grew up around custom cars and hot rods, started Grant Customs in 1995, has been popping out hand-formed custom sheet metal for all kinds of vehicles ever since. Now, these pieces that we've got in front of us are handmade for our Nissan hardbody, and they include these marker light fillers, a 3-piece taillight filler kit, a smoothed front bumper, door handle inserts if you're shaving your handles like we are, and a tailgate skin that incorporates the tailgate and a custom roll pan for a nice smooth look. But now, let's talk about door handles. This insert is designed to sit inside the factory recess and get welded in for a nice flush fit. But you know, if you've ever done any welding on sheet metal, especially on an import, you stand a pretty good chance of warping the sheet metal with your welder. So I'm going to show you some techniques that are going to help you minimize your warpage, but you can't weld to paint. Now, even though we're just welding around our insert, the heat from those welds is going to draw the sheet metal in below and above the handle. So we're going to brace it with some heavier stock and that's going to stabilize the metal and keep it from drawing in with the heat. Now, we sped this process up, but the important thing to remember is to let your welds cool between tacks so you don't force distortion into the metal.
After the break, we like French dressing on our taillights.
Cool.
And then for just $1, we'll show you how to fix a leaky door. Stay tuned.
Hey, welcome back. We're doing custom sheet metal work to body bag. Eric Saliba has already installed the Grand Customs tailgate and roll pan skin, but we wanted to change out the lame factory taillights for something cooler. So we had CanDo Custom send us their new mini Cadillac taillight kit. It comes with one-piece stamped fillers, recessed LED taillights, and your choice of clear or red brake lenses. Now the cool thing about a custom truck is you can put things anywhere you want. We're gonna put ours right about there.
With the light frame traced out, Ryan uses a 4-inch wheel for a nice straight cut. A carbide burr rounds out the corners from the inside. Then the light frame can be slid into the filler panel. This technique is traditionally known as Frenching. Ryan's tacking from the inside so that when the outside of the frame is ground flush, the weld strength is not compromised. Now with the light Frenched in, the insert gets tacked to the body about every 2 inches, and the LED taillight gets a test fit. That looks great, dude.
Sweet. Well, there you go. We've showed you some custom body mods you can apply to just about any vehicle.
Now all we got to do is spend another couple hundred hours welding, smoothing, priming, and blocking, and old body bag here is going to be ready for some custom paint.
Hey, here's something for you guys that are heading out to the racetrack. Something you definitely want to consider. This is Summit's new high-amp main power disconnect switch. This is a rotary on-off switch that can handle 250 amps continuously and a 2500 amp surge. Even comes with its own mounting bracket. We're going to mount ours right near the A-pillar, well within the reach of the driver and safety crew members. And for just $50, it might save your hide.
If you've ever had an annoying wind or water leak in a late model vehicle, here's a way to fix it, and it's only going to cost you $1. Open your door, throw your dollar bill in between the door frame and the weather seal. Now you should encounter a little bit of resistance, but you can see as we travel a little further up, it's sloppy. So we've identified where our leak is. Now here's how to fix it. Now make sure your window's open, but brace your door frame with your knee, grab a hold of the window frame, give it a couple tugs. Put your dollar back in. There you go. Leak's fixed. Thanks for watching Trucks. See you guys next week.